Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Season 2, Episode 26, A Canterlot Wedding Part 2. This is the second part of Canterlot Wedding Part 1. For these and other amazing revelations, continue to watch The Lore Runner. Or, I guess you don't have to. Anyways. So, this episode is an episode. It exists. I think everything to say about it. Tune in next time. No, I'm kidding. One moment, please. This is the best episode, or worst. I do like this episode better than part 1. A lot. Like, a lot better. But I think the reason why is because the bads aren't as glaring. And, it doesn't piss me off like the first episode did. But it does still have the problem of kind of ricocheting back and forth in quality, I've noticed. Let's just jump right into this. First of all, Chrysalis is not named in this episode. Did you catch that? I actually noticed that myself, and I was like, wait a second. Like, she's just the queen of the changelings. In fact, I did a little looking into this. She was actually named the first time in the comics. Honestly, considering that they didn't intend Discord to be a regular, or Nightmare Moon, or Luna, it would not actually surprise me if she was not intended, and the changelings were not intended to be regulars. Given the fact that Season 3 was supposed to be the final season of MLP, it is actually exceptionally likely that they weren't really planning a franchise here. Even though they are, keeping a reasonable amount of internal continuity, most of it's little stuff. Not a lot of recurrences, larger recurrences. That would actually be, the purview of later when it's like, we actually have a hit on our hands. Let's actually do something with it. Now, let's think about something for a second. So, I have successfully captured someone and put them down into a Dream Whisperer, because it's the capital of Equestria. Anywho, so having put somebody you captured down into a mine, we've learned that this is a mine that was actually a mine that the greedy unicorns, wanted to hoard all the gems, right? I find that actually interesting, because that lines up with what we know from Hearthwarming Eve. That back in the day, the unicorns were far greedier and selfish and stupid, and were basically hoarding all these gems here. What I also find interesting, though, is that this lines up neatly with the idea that gems grow. Because that cavern is not a cavern with a lot of gems in it. That is a crystalline cavern. So, if they hoarded a bunch of gems there, and gems grow, you kind of see how the two line up surprisingly neatly. So I think that qualifies as a continuity count, at least one. That should probably be 2, but we'll go with 1 for that one. But the other thing I want to bring up about that is we've got we've got the cavern, and we've got the fact that she's down there, and nobody even knows it's there anymore. I bring that point up because she has just consigned both Cadence and Twilight to death by starvation. Or actually dehydration, but you get my point. Now, what's actually interesting to even further is this is... how do I want to keep track of this? Let's just use fingers. We'll be simple. This is the first time Chrysalis is stupid. If she decided to just leave her down there, then no worries. She dies. The end. However, she decides to deliberately go out of her way to taunt her about her brother. Do you notice that? She does a little bit of light taunting, but then she actually pauses for a second, considers, and then decides to taunt her about her brother. Now, I bring this up because, again, this episode is really well done and badly done at the same time. It's hysterical. So, because the way it's really well done is you clearly get the idea that Twilight is basically broken. After all the events of the first episode, irritating though they may be, she's a broken person, and she's sobbing, and she's curling up, and flinching away from her. And then Chrysalis is like, And now I'm going to go deal with your brother. That is what pushes Twilight's buttons, and then Twilight actually starts fighting back. Now, this still makes sense, because what then happens is she leads her towards Cadance, right? The real Cadance. Now, the intent here was obvious, getting her to attack, Cadance. This is stupid. This is the first stupid thing I mentioned that she does. Because it's just too easy to prove that that's not Cadance, for anybody who has a brain. And, like it or not, the first episode did establish that Twilight actually does have a brain. So even if we just take the 2 episodes and not the whole series into continuity, this makes perfect sense. That she would figure it out, I mean. So, stupidity mark number 1. So she goes after Cadance. I really like the injured Cadance look they had for her. It was a nice touch. I also want to give special praise to the actress who plays Cadance and also Chrysalis as Cadance. She does a really good job modifying her tone while basically still sounding like the same person. Good acting. Anyways, so yeah, Cadance is there, and she's, any viewer can immediately and instantly tell that she's different. And I don't remember who voices her. I want to say Kat Dennings. That can't be wrong. Hang on. MLP Cadance voice actress. Britt McKillop, excuse me. I don't know what else she does, but that's her. Let's see, she's been in some Barbie things. What are these? These are shows. She has a lot of television. Nothing I would know. Apparently she's the voice of Chloe in Bratz, which is a main character thing. That's probably her main thing. Anywho, she does a good job. And yeah, she also is wincing. She's wincing when she does the dance. Which brings me to the dance. This is probably going to sound like the stupidest thing I've ever seen about this show, but I love that. Not the dance itself, but even within this episode, the fact that she immediately uses that to identify herself to Twilight was good. That was awesome. What I love more about this, though, and I'm going to mention it now and every time it comes up, is every single frickin' time they meet each other in the future, one of the first things they do is that dance. Considering the two both have... I mean, obviously, it's done as a friendship thing, but it's literally done as an identifier. In the episode where they're like, oh my god, there's a changeling that's been seen with their kid, with Cadance's and Shining Armor's child. You remember that episode? In order to verify that that's Twilight, that's how they verify, is they do the dance. I know that's the dumbest thing to latch onto. Flurry Heart, thank you. I know that's the dumbest thing to latch onto, but I love that they consistently use that going forward. Anyways. Unfortunately, we can't give the continuity counter for it now, but trust me, we're going to be giving that every time it shows up. Especially when it's used to identify who Twilight is. Anywho, so, oh my god, and you can tell, and she does the song, and there's also this neat little bit. This is surprisingly good little bit of foreshadowing. She's looking in the distance, and she sees just a little bit of a sparkle, no pun intended, and it reflects in her eye as well. Now, we've actually seen that exact animation before in this show, in the first episode, when Twilight realized the significance of her friends. Now, this is bloody brilliant. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. Later on in the episode, she is told that she has to go with her friends and get the elements of harmony to fight back. However, if you'll remember, in the first episode, they actually fail to get the elements of harmony. They're shattered by Nightmare Moon. However, even in the absence of the physical elements, they still manage to make it happen because of their position within the pattern as the elements of harmony. Now, do they get the elements of harmony in this episode? That's ruddy brilliant. I love that. That is so quiet, the way they do that. Because what actually defeats the enemy is the connection between ponies. In this case, specifically Shining Armor and Cadance. That's awesome. Now, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I wanted to point that out. Like I said, this episode is I really enjoy it. despite the fact that it still has some flaws. But I'm not really at the flaws part yet, so let's move forward a little bit. So, then we have This Day Aria, which is the name of the song. Speaking of bloody subtle, I know that I say that I don't know music theory, but it's worth noting that I have actually analyzed music a lot in my life. And this is a duet. The song that's sung. Now that's interesting in its own right, because arias are by definition solo pieces. Now you're already getting it, because the same actress sings them. The same actress sings both roles. But it is two roles being sung, so it kind of is an aria and a duet. I had to comment on the brilliance of that. That is incredibly amusing. And the song itself is awesome. I can't remember the name. I just looked her name up, but she has some pipes on her. She did a really good job with that song, and the song itself is extremely well done. I think it actually replaces Smile as my favorite song so far. I've been keeping track as we go. Smile is probably my number 2, but this one I think has actually kind of shoved its way up into number 1. This is really... I should keep track of that. I should write those down, so... I should have been doing that this whole time. God, I'm so disorganized and stupid. Anyways, I don't have much to say about the song other than what I just did and the fact that it's amazing. And the first time we see Cadence, either of them, in either episode, actually stretch her wings out, is like at the, I don't know the proper musical term, but it's at the part right before the finale, like the big upswing of the song, is when she goes ahead and flaps her wings out as she's soaring out carrying Twilight. It's really well done, and it's a great moment to reveal the wings and show that she can fly, and so to speak. So then they see the bridesmaids. Crescendo? I think that's right. I could be wrong. Like I said, I failed music theory class back in high school. I've told that story before. Moving on. So then she has to fight the bridesmaids. This is the best actual evidence that Chrysalis straight up has mind control. Obviously, we have the evidence with Shining Armor himself, but the bridesmaids also have the green glow and are also mind controlled. And so we have now established a pattern that she has that within her arsenal. Cool. That does explain a few things and helps lend towards the whole doesn't need to be a good infiltrator thing that we were mentioning last time. I have to admit, the method by which they defeat the bridesmaids actually did make me laugh. Look. Anyways. So, this is when they first say the name Changeling. Changelings are creatures that take the form of the ones you love and then feed off that love. Boy, that sounds familiar. That almost sounds like a succubus. Did you know Kathleen Barr at one point actually voices Morrigan from the Darkstalker series? For those of you not aware, Morrigan is a succubus. Now let me just say, I think the introduction of the Changelings to the setting was a brilliant move. Really. In fact, if anything, I lament how little they were used. Although, again, I haven't seen the last 2 seasons, so shrug. But... yeah, this is actually a really brilliant thing, because they are dark without crossing any lines. They can actually slide in, replace you, and literally feed off of the love you have for someone else. We'll actually see this happen on camera later. And in so doing, grow literally stronger. This episode helps to showcase that. I'll get to that in just a second. That is such a brilliant step, something that's so brilliant to add as a villainous group in a setting like this one, where, you know, love and friendship and connections is such not only an obvious thematic relevance to the show, but a literal, tangible effect upon the setting within universe, in character. The idea of the Changelings is actually really awesome, and I love their concept. Again, I'm not going to talk too much about the Changelings right now, because frankly, they're not really used all that much right now. So we'll get to that later. That will come up later, more than once. Which brings me to my next point. So, Kathleen Barr, I already said this, she voices Chrysalis. You may or may not recognize that name because she voices Trixie. Yes, that Trixie. I just thought that was really funny. No kidding, Sierra Mike. Anywho, I have to give even more praise to this episode. Sorry. Plus to story. The reveal of Queen Chrysalis is extremely well done, and it is exactly as creepy as it needs to be. The design with chrysalids and the changelings in general is sheer brilliance. Whoever actually came up with the design needs a frickin' raise. And a medal. Sorry, I don't mean to be so negative. Because they are just close enough to being normal without actually being normal. Deliberate uncanny valley. In addition to that, they have the insect thing going for them. So you combine the sound design, which is almost entirely of insects. Like, even as they're moving, you can actually hear, like, I'm not doing it because my skin is skin, but you can hear the chittering and the scraping of, like, chitin scraping against other chitin as they're moving. And yes, she literally looks incomplete, which we'll talk about later. That will come up. And an addendum to that, there's the sound design on her voice and the way she's revealed, where it looks like she has no face and then just her eyes pop in. Extremely well done. It's so easy to go too hard, to go too far when it comes to creepy or that kind of design. I think they hit the sweet spot. The changelings are brilliantly designed, especially Chrysalis herself. So, I have a niece all through her. I admittedly have not seen Powerpuff, so I can't actually speak to that. But anyways, extremely, extremely well designed. Huge, huge props. Now, this then leads to her basically giving her big villain speech. Ha ha ha. I'm super evil. Ha ha ha. And everyone's like, oh no. And then Celestia's like, you're an idiot. And I'm going to defeat you now. This scene is, the scene where Celestia fights her, is once again very well done. So, first, Celestia goes to defeat her. And you'll notice it actually goes out of its way to show Chrysalis is flinching away, like, oh god, what am I going to do? Then, Chrysalis starts to fight back. And Chrysalis is barely struggling and just barely managing, and oh god, she can't quite do it. And then she starts to win. Then it shows Chrysalis and Celestia are both shocked by the fact that she's winning, and then Celestia goes down, and Chrysalis is like, huh? All of that, in my opinion, was very well designed. Because it all makes sense, it all lines up. It is, in my opinion, very good writing, because it presents an answer to one of the most difficult questions that faces any fictional writer ever. How do you challenge the heroes? If you put too many tools into the arsenal of your heroes, it gets harder and harder to actually challenge them. I honestly could just call this Star Trek syndrome, because it is a problem that every good writer in Star Trek has faced for decades at this point. How do you challenge the heroes when you can teleport and create things from thin air, right? So, in this instance, this is great. This is exactly what it needs to be, and it makes perfect sense, and it lines up perfectly. I have nothing but positive things to say about this scene, as it is right here. And I need to keep stressing that way, because as everyone in chat is already pointing out, this is going to become a trend, and it will not be well written later. But I do think this time it was well done, so I'm willing to give this one the pass, because they did their legwork. They made it work. They actually made it make sense. There is one flaw with this, but I'm not there yet. So, then they're like, okay, time to go get the elements of harmony. That makes sense. How did they defeat Nightmare Moon? Elements of harmony. How'd they defeat Discord? Elements of harmony. We've got a pattern. You know, we got a trend. It's cool. Let's go. Let's go. So they go to the big action sequence. And I don't actually have much to say about the big action sequence, but I noticed a couple of things. First and foremost, they really show the insect hive thing, which is great. Second of all, there's a bunch of little bits in the big action sequence. I'm not going to list all of them. There's some good stuff there. Probably my personal favorite is when Fluttershy is like, oh god, I'll kill you. I'll kill you. And the other's like, oh, okay, I guess they're actually one of us. That was adorable. What's funny is the other moment I want to call attention to was also a Fluttershy moment. No, I just think of this as a show, Alt Ripper. I don't see the need to add any qualifier. The other moment is when Pinkie Pie was talking to a changeling, like, do this, do this, do this. And it finally gets to Fluttershy, and it's like, do me. And she's like, oh, fine, I'll impersonate you. Yeah, the eye roll was actually really adorable, the way they did that. And then she's like, yeah, I've seen better, which is funny because this is before that episode. Lol. I suppose that's one of those amusing in hindsight moments. I will say, however, unlike most action sequences, yeah, the mirror of whatever they call it, unlike most episodes, they actually do a good job with the directing. It's harder than it sounds to direct action sequences, because there's a lot going on, and, I mean, how many times have you guys seen a thing where, okay, there's 5 guys versus 3 guys, so what does the game, show, or movie demonstrate? These 2 square off, so it's 1v1, and these 2 square off, so it's 1v1, and these 2 square off, so it's 1v1, right? Now, the reason most people do that is because it's easier. It is so much easier to direct, that is to say, to do the choreography for a 1v1 fight. So I want to give this special props for the fact that they actually bothered to do more than 1v1 multiple times in a row. Kudos. Granted, this is animation, so they can skip some of the problems of, live action choreography. But even, video games and, animated works, CGI works, tend to have the same problem of the, all right, let's come at the hero one at a time thing, right? So, props. Then I got to share a little story. Forgive me for pausing for just a second here. She hasn't cloned herself before, Lord Harriman. That episode hasn't happened yet. That was my point. At least I'm pretty sure it hasn't. Pretty sure it's a season 3 or 4 episode. Hang on. Pull up the list. It's calling me into question. It's a good thing to do. Too Many Pinkie Pie, season 3, episode 3. That's actually not even that far from now. So, no. Don't apologize. There's no reason not to call me to task. I need to be able to prove my sources, otherwise I shouldn't be talking about it. So, look at my notes. There's a montage at the end where it's like, it's just one shot. It's right? As it's each of them beating the crap out of one of the changelings one by one. And it kind of rapid fires through the same montage. It's like a 4-second sequence. You probably don't even remember it, but that is burned into my memory. And you know why? So, I think I actually still have it on my phone. I might. Hang on, let me check. I might not. No, there it is. My Little Pony Quest? Is this the one? This might not be it. Nope, this is totally it. My Little Pony Quest. This is for my niece. And this is a little mobile game. I know you can't really see it here. About it's really dumb. It's a terrible game, but she liked it every now and again. The way it works is you go and you do a mission, and then you do a bunch of little mini games in order to catch a changeling. Once you catch the changeling, that animation plays straight out of this episode every time she successfully catches a changeling. So I've kind of seen / heard that animation a lot. And it's always weird every time I watch the episode and be like, that's just straight out of the game. Anyways, I just wanted to share that really quick because holy crap. So they try. So what happens is then good writing. Again, they have successfully taken on a small group of changelings. Smart. They're superheroes, right? As Sierra Mike was rightly complaining about. They rush off to get to the elements of harmony, and two things happen. One, the elements of harmony are not going to avail them. Smart. And two, they're overwhelmed by even more changelings, which again, smart. Just because you can take on 20 guys doesn't mean you can take on 200. So the fact that they get captured actually makes perfect friggin' sense. And yeah, the swarm just descends upon them. So yeah, okay, I'm with that. Cool. And of course, then we see Celestia in a cocoon, which is terrifying in its own right. Before I move forward, I want to mention something. Yeah, it fits the changelings of the species, because they got the whole bug motif going on. There's this bit where Chrysalis is gloating. Because of course she does. Luna's asleep, yes, I know. No, seriously, Luna is asleep. I looked it up. I don't know why she wouldn't wake up special for this event, but at the same time, she might not care. After all, she doesn't have any real connection to anybody involved. The guards were completely worthless. That's not great. But that's going to become kind of a thing going forward as well. Moving on. So, Chrysalis is bragging. And then Applejack, of her own individual, her own desire, her own oomph, walks forward and apologizes to Twilight for the last episode. She is the only one to make any kind of restitution towards Twilight. I have to know, is anybody else even mildly bothered by that? Like, Applejack doing it makes perfect sense. I'm actually not complaining about that. The problem is, no one else does. AJ, to put it bluntly, manned up. And everyone else is like, sorry we're ostracized you and we're mean to you and didn't listen to you and we're dumb. They should make one of those pre-made cards. Pre-made card, you just sign your name. It says, you open it up, I'm sorry I had the idiot ball. Yeah, no kidding, Shikor. One person ponying up and actually apologizing. It's pretty realistic. I don't actually have anything else to say about that. It just bugs the crap out of me, and I wanted to mention it. Anyways. So then she has the reprise, who says a girl can't really have it all. And... So, there's this bit. Sorry. So there's this bit where... Oh, God, I'm losing words. I'm kind of tired. I'm still recovering from the Ace Attorney thing. There's this bit where... Cadence. There's too many characters that start with a C in this episode. Cadence goes over to Shining Armor and casts her love spell on him, which breaks the mind control. Huh. It almost sounds like she cast a mental heal spell on him. I've already made my point clear on this one. I've already said what I have to say about her love spell. I just wanted to mention it because I'm further giving evidence for the fact that I think it's more of a mental heal than it is making love happen. And we talked about this quite a bit in the last episode, so just putting evidence down on the table. Anywho, this is where... Oh, I missed the second time. Well, whatever. This is when I've been losing track, but this is when Celestia really gets stupid, like really, really, really stupid. She herself was shocked by the fact that she defeated Celestia, and the episode makes it very clear, and this was well written, that the only reason she defeated Celestia was because of the amount of love she had absorbed from Shining Armor. Then Cadence is like, oh, you must, my love will be the power you need for this spell, Shining Armor. And Shining Armor's like, oh, I don't know if I can do it. And Chrysalis actually flat out says, and I quote, what a lovely but absolutely ridiculous sentiment. I'm sorry, I haven't been keeping track as much as I would like, but the point is Chrysalis is stupid in every single moment she's in this episode. It's a little hard to enjoy a villain when she is so dumb. Interesting side note. Did you see the shot where Chrysalis and the changelings were flung to after the protection spell went up? You know, the Badlands area? I sincerely doubt that was planned. So this is probably another example of backloaded storytelling, but interesting to think about. Yeah, they were just shot right out to the Badlands. Anywho, moving on. So then we have our happy ending. I haven't actually watched the rest of this episode in a while, so this is my first time in actually analyzing this a bit. It's not that bad. I mean, it's got some issues, and there's some weird things where, like, people are talking basically out of place when they probably shouldn't be, and we've got some random little jokes here and there, and we've got the bachelor party after the wedding, and then Luna shows up, and it's just, it kind of falls a little flat, you know? Yeah, I do think this qualifies as a wah-wah. If not for one individual moment, then just for the way the entire denouement is treated. I will say, however, despite my aggravations with it, which I do have, I do want to point out three things that jumped out at me, and then I want to talk about two last things. So first of all, I like the bit what Rarity is like, oh, it's so amazing. And then, while Rarity's not looking, AJ just looks around, grabs the hat, puts the hat back on. There we go. That actually got a chuckle out of me. Second thing is DJ Pones is present without her glasses on for the first time and possibly the last time. Magenta eyes. Third of all, at this point, Rainbow can now do a sonic rain boom on command, which I'm not complaining about. It's just interesting to think about, given how much of an issue it was last time. I like Pones better, but okay, fine. Pony. Now, I said I had two last things to talk about. Where's their military? We've talked about this before. We have. This actually has come up already during these Streaminations. We have actually discussed why the absence of a military is a bad thing, and how it's kind of a problem, and how it'll be a problem in the future. So here we are at our next instance of the absence of a military being a bad thing. And what's interesting is you'd think they would actually think to do something about this, and yet everyone's just kind of cool with them not having a military after this incident, despite the fact that it would have been very useful at this point in time. And yeah, this is going to keep coming up. I'm not sure if it's deliberate on behalf of the authors or not. Who needs a military? Ah. Well, first, Chikor. Stab! There we go, now that you're dead. As we pointed out the last time we discussed the absence of military, one of the really weird things that people tend to think, because people are stupid, and I'm just going to say that as bluntly as I can, is that a military is only there for conquering other nations or defending your nation from conquest. Now, I can get why people think that, but that is amazingly wrong. A military is actually an incredibly vital tool for any nation, on many levels, most notably and especially at the civil layer. One of my favorite examples, Bragon actually brought this up last time we talked this up, one of my favorite examples is the Engineering Corps, which does a whole lot more than conquering or defending, and is a military organization. And, I mean, if you have a major disaster, or if you have some kind of I don't know, epidemic, or maybe you have some civil unrest, or maybe there's just a supply issue. Yeah, there's so many things that a military can and does do that do not involve bang or die. Kind of like Starfleet. Actually, that's not a bad way to put that, Savicom. If I'm being honest, this is one of the reasons why the whole Starfleet is not a military argument pisses me off so much, because it's an argument at its core, which is going to Roddenberry, is an argument of ignorance. It's an argument that says a military is bad. And that is ignorant, to be as blunt as I possibly can. Military, I mean, obviously I am a bit biased here, and I will freely admit that. But I don't just have family members who have been in the military. I've actually been friends with a lot of people within the Navy, within the Marines, and within the Army over my years. Never known anyone in the Air Force. Like, military can do a lot of good when they're not at war. And I bring this up because this is a strange thing to bring up, but it makes perfect sense that they would have degenerated, and yeah, I'm going to say it that way, to the point of not having a military in Equestria. What bothers me is the fact that they then don't make it a background story element, that they then fix it, right? Start actually recruiting and building up some kind of military presence. At the bare minimum, some kind of National Guard. Something. I know this sounds so stupid. You know, blah blah blah. It's a show for kids. Yada yada yada. I've already explained why I don't find any of those to be valid arguments. This is the kind of thing that, in my opinion, should be brought up within the narrative of this show. Instead, what tends to come up is the fact that they have no military and it's a problem. Like I said, this is not the last time this is coming up. It will be coming up again in the future. And there also is going to be a little bit of... Sierra Mike actually brought this up in the middle of the... while I was still watching the episode in the chat. There's going to be a little bit of the superhero reliance problem going on here, where, oh, well, we have Batman, so we don't need to bother. You know, that kind of mentality, which is something comics have actually discussed before, and shown why that's actually a terrible mentality and can lead to some very bad things. So... Anywho, I just wanted to mention all of that because second time it came up, and I'll be bringing it up the next time it comes up, and the next time, and the next time. Yeah, why can no one rescue hostages besides Batman? That is a good, damned question. I could really go off on a tangent about that, but let's not. Let's instead move on to my final thoughts. Which is, let's end on something positive. This is our weekly moment of positivity, right? I mean, we can analyze something and be positive, too. I know, strange, right? There's a montage that happens as Cadenza... No, this isn't Ponyville, though, Shikor. As to say, Cadence is going through the wedding preparation sequence. You'll notice there's no dialogue over that sequence. And yet, through animation... and through directing, basically visual presentation, her attitude is established and shown in contrast to Chrysalis. This is actually extremely well done, in my opinion. And once again, yay, you know, good part of the show. Like this whole episode just kind of does this whole time. And we get a very clear view of her emotions and how she gets along with others. Probably the most obvious and overt example is when she dances with Pinky, like Pinky, while setting up for the party. I bring all this up because it's a shame that Cadence, in my opinion, isn't really all that well used past this point. And it's interesting because this is such an efficient usage of time to establish a character, like, in the last 5 minutes of the episode. And yes, this also, unfortunately, also makes the first part even worse. Like, this is really when the Babylon 5 effect comes to full fruition here. Because watching this immediately after the first episode is just like... What? I had one last thought, but I think I'm actually going to save that for next week. All I'm going to say is that I have a feeling that Cadence and Shining Armor are both basically presented as good guys. I know what you're thinking. Well, of course they are, Lore. What I mean by that is their characterization is good people. Right? Like, you know what that type of character is. That's like a very commonly used character trait in a lot of fiction. And, well, I tend to like good people. Oftentimes, they are fairly flat, one-dimensional characters who are basically good people. Yeah, people you want to be around, exactly. So, well, they don't really stand out all that much for me. And like I said, this will come up in the next two-parter, because we're covering Crystal Empire Part 1 and Part 2 next week. And heading into Season 3. Shrug. We'll see what I like of them going forward. I like that idea, Sierra Mark, by the way, I really do. So that's it for Season 2. I wanted to do a bit of a wrap-up of Season 2 while we're here. Because we did that for Season 1, and I like doing these, so screw you. Season 2 had... Let's see here. Give me a second. Season 2 had Secret of My Excess. That would be when Spike turns into a dragon. It had Last Roundup, which I had many issues with. Super Speedy Cider Squeezy 6000, which despite being fun, was actually written pretty terribly. Putting Your Hoof Down, which pissed me off. And Dragon... Well, no, that's kind of it. So those are the bads, in my opinion. Those are the ones that were just kind of, eh. Which brings me to my other point. Season 2 also had Return of Harmony, a.k.a. the introduction of Discord. Luna Eclipsed, a.k.a. the introduction of Luna, and really awesome. Sisterhood of Social, which was okay. We'll leave that in the average category. May the Best Pet Win, which was very well done. We'll skip down a little bit. Hearthwarming Eve, which is one of my favorites from this season. Read It and Weep, which was extremely fun. Not super well done, but very, very fun. A Friend Indeed, which was both good and bad. It's About Time, which is probably my second favorite episode this season. Mystery on the Friendship Express, which was good filler. Canterlot Wedding Part 2, which I rather enjoyed. Ponyville Confidential, which was astonishingly well written. And my favorite episode this season, which is Hurricane Fluttershy. This is a really good season, isn't it? And that's actually my point. I think this is why MLP took off right here. I mean, I know there's like 6 or 7 reasons for it, and they all kind of combine together. But I think the fact that there's Season 2 managed to nail the quality across the board, not just having spikes, but pretty good across the board quality, is probably one of the reasons that it managed to get its hooks in as well as it did, and get the standing power that it did. I've done a little looking into the behind the scenes here. Because of the nature of how television is done, they were already about halfway through Season 3 when they got the news that the show was being renewed. AKA, something that they were not expecting. Remember, they thought Season 3 was it, because that's all it was signed for initially. That's also why Season 3 is shorter. And I am pretty sure that a lot of that is because of the success and sales of Season 2. It's not like Season 1 was bad, it was just kind of, This is just my opinion. I don't actually know. But I do think this is a good reason why a lot of people got invested in the show, if nothing else. To further add to my point, how many times have I mentioned something in Season 2 where I've been like, well, I can't give a continuity counter for this, but I will in the future when it references this. A lot of Season 2 is going to come back in the future. And that you can't tell me that's a coincidence. So, next week we're going to look at Season 3. I've been debating how to deal with the offset thing. Because we could just only cover one episode that day, or we could just jump into Season 4. I haven't decided yet, and there's your answer. That being stated, I don't want to combine Princess Twilight Sparkle into one coverage, and I don't want to combine Crystal Empire into two things. So what we're probably going to do is just kind of skip an episode and just do Magical Mystery Cure, which is Season 3, Episode 13, and then cut off And then next week we'll start Season 4. That is most likely what we're going to do going forward. That being said, looking ahead at Season 3. So we have Crystal Empire, which we'll talk about when we get there. Too Many Pinkie Pies, which pisses me off. One Bad Apple, which I don't want to give an opinion on that one, so we'll see when we get there. Magic Duel, which I remember enjoying. Sleepless in Ponyville, which is a very good episode, by memory. Wonderbolt Academy, we'll see when we get there. Just for Sidekicks, that's a decent one. Apple Family Reunion, which I barely remember. Spike at Your Service, which we're not going to talk about until we get there. Keep Calm and Flutter On. That would be the second Discord episode. Enough said. The Equestrian Games episode, which I actually really like that one. And Magical Mystery Cure, which makes a lot more sense now that I know that it was actually supposed to be the end of the series. Because as an individual episode, that episode doesn't make a lot of sense. Nevertheless, there's a lot of things... This sounds strange, but even though Season 3 I think is lower in quality than Season 2, I am more interested in analyzing it. I am actually quite curious to really dig into several of these episodes and compare and contrast them. So... either way, I hope you guys have enjoyed. This is, of course, the final stream for today. We'll be back with more Ori and the Blind Forest tomorrow. Otherwise, I will see you around, guys.